In today's episode of Absolute Madness and Insanity, we're going to see if we can beat Final Fantasy IX without healing. And considering all the party swaps, forced encounters, and general need to steal, I think it's pretty obvious that this is going to suck. Well, for me it will, you not so much. Now, before I can Hulk smash my head through a wall though, we need to explain the rules to help you understand why this is one of the dumbest challenges I've decided to do. But hey, I didn't need these 300 hours anyway. Now, rule 1. The title explains it all. I can't do any action that results in me being healed. This means no healing with items, magic, or elemental absorptions. In battle, if my health goes up, that is an instant fail. Cleansing statuses though is perfectly fine as it does not change my HP. And of course, these rules fully apply to my MP as well. Rule 2. There are some mandatory story sections in the game where we will be healed as part of a cutscene. We have no way to avoid these, and so they will be allowed. Rule 3. Taking into account the previous 2 rules, I am not allowed to revive a character in any way if they die. This means no Phoenix Downs, no life, or full life spells. Auto life is also banned, and if by some odd miracle Phoenix is summoned by Ico, that also counts as a fail. Characters can only be revived by the story heals mentioned in Rule 2. Rule number 4. No mods. For the first time in a very long time, we don't need to mod any characters in for this challenge. So, all mods are banned except for visual mods such as Meguri and PlayStation buttons. And lastly, Rule 5. My good friend Tantarian recently did a no-level run for FF9 where he named Zidane after me. Normally, this is super sweet. The downside is, he let me die hundreds of times, and I can't return the favor with equal revenge here. So, we're going to do it in a different way. By supporting the channel over on Ko-Fi, not only do you get some epic benefits like early access and discounted merch, you also get to help support me in buying a boat. I feel like that could be excellent revenge. So, with all that out of the way, let's go get murdered, shall we? And while I spend the first fight stealing from Baku for the Mage Master, I realize an issue. With Meguri, there's a new option in the menu which essentially gives me an instant ATB bar after actions. Now, I thought it was just going to increase the speed of the battles. Turns out it does, but in a way that is absolutely cheating. So, time to restart and change the options so that it is set to normal. Now, let's talk about the first issue we're going to have in this run, and that is going to be abilities. In FF10 no healing, we had a few points in the game where we could grind without the chance of taking damage. In FF9, we have no such locations. This means any and every fight I do has the chance to diminish my HP. Status effects can be absolutely lethal. Ambushes will basically be reset for almost the entirety of the game. And this also means at no point can we really stop to learn abilities and skills. Lastly, we will have to balance the desire to steal gear from bosses with the con of the fights taking longer, allowing them to do more damage. And this is the sort of run where a simple mistake early on could have grave consequences later. Especially with snowballing. Not only do we have to be smart the entire run, we also have to plan the entire run. And when something unexpected happens, we'll have to change our entire plan for the rest of the game. One bad crit can ruin hours of progress after all. Anyway, after we finally steal the Mage Master, we can defeat Baku. At this point in time, we don't need to worry about the damage we take. Sounds weird, I know, considering we're trying to do the whole game without healing, but a lot of these tutorial fights actually automatically heal anyway after them. But also, Zidane, who was named Ko-Fi, remember, by a boat, didn't actually take any damage, and he's the only one I care about out of these 4 characters. So now we can just casually stroll through Alexandria as Vivi, and yes, we absolutely steal an old lady's life savings because that's just how we roll. Find out we're dealing with counterfeit tickets, and agree to become a slave for a foreign prince. Okay, you know what? When you actually look at FF9 objectively with knowledge of who characters are, there's some real messed up stuff. Anyway, break into the Queen's castle in front of literally every important person in the country and enjoy a play with some mock fights. Again though, we don't need to worry about damage in this fight. Then we have the sword fight, and of course I'm going to flex by doing it first time. We want to impress all 100 nobles and the Queen. The Moonstone isn't hugely important to us this run, however, the 10,000 gil absolutely is. So we're gonna get it, and with a very easy pan, it naturally happened. I always love it when there's so few left or right presses, as in my opinion, those are the ones that cause the most issues. Then we can casually advance on through to Evil Forest, since the fights with Steiner are basically impossible to lose. And I would really rather not give any incriminating evidence to the Queen's lawyers for how we broke into her castle and technically kidnapped her daughter, the lovely Princess Garnet. I know she came willingly to the point of essentially asking us to kidnap her, but I mean, do you really want to argue with the leader of a country over semantics? You wouldn't even make it to your next meal doing that. Anyway, once we're in Evil Forest, this is now basically where the strategy starts. We now don't get auto-healed after every fight. In fact, I'm pretty sure now the only future story heals in Disc 1 are after Plant Cage, after Evil Forest, maybe one in Dali, and then in Lindblum. So I'm sure you can see how this is gonna go, especially because for the rest of Disc 1 we have 7 bosses to get through, a boatload of mandatory fights, and some side quests. So we're going to use this chance to learn our current abilities for Zidane. Why? This is literally the only area in the game we are 100% guaranteed to get a single mob in a fight for a 1v1. Not only that, we can save scum it pretty easily using the Moogle to ensure we never take damage. Doing this is great for 2 reasons. Firstly, we get some extra levels on Zidane, which is ideal as we need to kill the next boss before he attacks Garnet twice, as that's an instant game over. But also because we need Flee and Detect mastered from Zidane's Mage Masher. This is super important for later. So we're going to grind a little now while it's somewhat safer to prepare for Black Waltz 1 and Sea Lion later, which Ko-Fi has to solo. And of course, anytime I get hit, I quit out and reload the save to stay at 105 HP. Once we're done, it's time to save and head for the first boss, the Plant Cage. We have Ko-Fi and Linktree for this fight, and Ko-Fi gets a super buff because of all the emotional support. This is going to be our linchpin here. We can't use Tidal Flame because it will kill Garnet and give us a game over, so we have to use free energy. But there's a problem. My controller died, and so I couldn't do anything at all. Nice to have our very first fail of the run, literally the instant we fight the first boss. This is gonna be one of those runs, I feel. Honestly, just call it instinct at this point. So, let's try again. And things go great. We get a free energy off and then even a critical with Linktree's follow-up attack, ending the first stage of the fight. But then the plant runs off with Garnet and comes back to trap Vivi, and in doing so begins round 2 of the fight. This time around we don't have any trance though. However, Vivi does cast fire on the boss from the inside. The only plan here is to kill it ASAP, ignoring the steals. In doing so, I suffered 10 damage on Linktree, which is absolutely fine, but a huge 30 damage on Ko-Fi. Then shortly afterwards, the boss goes down, but not before farting all over my guys. It's cool though, they can get some bed rest with an antidote for the toxic fumes, and I'm pretty sure we get a story heal here, which will be hugely beneficial. Then we have a rematch with Baku, only this time he's not pulling his punches. The problem here is I want his Iron Sword Steel for the next boss, so I set a limit of 100 HP for Ko-Fi. So if I haven't got the steel by 350 HP, I'll reset and try again. This time around though, the RNG gods are slightly on my side and I managed to get the steel in just a few attempts. And it was right at my 100 HP limit as well. Thankfully, with our levels, we can take Baku down in just 2 hits. But we did however lose a total of 131 HP over this fight. Is this a lot? No, but it is a quarter of our health for Ko-Fi, which isn't ideal given we have another boss coming up, and also a mandatory fight with the plant spiders. So let's equip everybody up with gear now and make sure all the abilities are equipped before we head out. Then we go to the waterfall in Evil Forest, making sure that we don't get any random encounters. Once we get here and inspect it, all of the random encounters in Evil Forest are disabled. Now we can head straight for the next boss, the Plant Brain. Now I really want the Iron Helm Steel here because it teaches Linktree the level up ability, which is gonna be amazing to get, but this boss can really hurt me, so I'm not gonna push for it. But fate is on my side today, it seems, as I get it at first steal. Now I can continue burning it alive with Fire Sword and Fire Magic, while Ko-Fi switches over to normal attacks. Discord does get smacked with a tentacle, dropping him down to just 25 HP, but hey, that's 24 more than he even needs right now. And with that, we manage to get another couple of hits in before Blank comes and joins us, who also, thankfully, soaks the boss's next hit for me. And as a bright side, I don't care if Blank takes damage because he's about to leave the party forever. But a few more fires and fire swords and the boss goes down. Great, now we just need to burn a few mandatory plant spider fights to get out of Evil Forest. Blank becomes so hard that every straight woman in Gaia is now looking for him. Garnet eventually wakes up after resting and we get a Moogle Flute. We also get a nice story heal. I really regret not using the plant spiders to try and level Discord and Linktree up though to take advantage of it. Would have been super helpful for a boss a little later, but our next stop though is the Ice Cavern, and this place can be nasty. So we're going to ignore the extra items in here and rush straight through to the Moogle so we can save before our next boss fight. But to get to the Ice Cavern, we're going to abuse a trick known as the Stutter Step. This lets us get through the world map without a random encounter, because we essentially trick the game. With not doing a full step, our hidden step counter doesn't actually change, and this means we can avoid moving the RNG table on the overworld, which in turn means no random encounters. It, however, only works on the world map. Now, before the next boss, I make a backup save here because I have no idea if Dali has a heal or not, and my strategy for later completely depends on if it does or not. And so, it's on to Sea Lion and Black Waltz 1. This is a fight where Ko-Fi has to solo it and it's 2v1. Not only that, but I also really want a steal. Namely, I want the Mithril Dagger from Sea Lion. Normally, I would also want the Silk Shirt from Black Waltz, but that's too dangerous to go for both. So, what we're going to do first is to kill Black Waltz 1, since he only has 250 HP, and once he is dead, it reduces the amount of damage coming into us. Then, we can attempt a few steals while being mindful that if we don't get a story heal in the next town, it means we have to do 2 bosses back to back, and both of them are really mean. So, I kill Black Waltz off, but I lost over 100 HP in the process. since it takes 3 hits to kill him. Then I instantly swap Ko-Fi over to the back row while stealing. This is so his melee attacks do less damage and I get a few more turns in. Then I proceed to have 0 luck with my steals, but on the bright side, my transport is slowly going up. I do eventually manage to get the Mithril Dagger, but I only have 90 HP left after the steal. At this point, I use a normal attack to do 46 damage, but my HP is low enough now that if he uses Blizzard, I die. Thankfully, he uses another wing attack that leaves me with just 14 HP left, but it puts me into trance. So I instantly go over to Dying and use Tidal Flame, thinking that will get me the kill. But it doesn't. It only deals 396 damage. This means we did a total of 442 damage to Sea Lion, aka he has just 8 HP left before he uses Tsunami and kills me off. Honestly, the plan was sound. We just got hella unlucky with the steals, really. So, let's try again. And it starts out the same way. We kill Black Waltz 1 first, then we somehow get the Mithril Dagger on the first freaking steal attempt after swapping over to the back row. And I do some hits in to lower Sea Lion's health down, but I pushed it too far and made him get a yellow orb on his chest. This lets him hit me with Blizzard, dealing a huge 50 damage to me. So I hit him a few more times, but I once again pushed him too far. This time into his red orb phase, which lets him hit me with Tsunami. And so now I'm left on just 40 HP. But instead of attacking again, I wait because I'm 1 hit away from trance. He hits me again, which leaves me on just 4 HP. And nightmare, I didn't enter trance. I am like right at the border zone for it. And so I can't get a hit out with Tidal Flame before he ultimately finishes me off again. Okay. Surely 3rd time is the charm. This starts out 1-1 like the second run. We kill Black Waltz 1 and change to the back row. Only this time I still have 350 HP left, which is a really nice boost. Then I also get the steal first attempt again, which means I need to go buy a lottery ticket. And this time I just hit him twice to deal about 100 damage. And then at this point I know full well if I keep attacking, I'm going to have to deal with Blizzard and Tsunami, and they deal way too much damage. So I just sit here and let him hit me until he puts me into a trance, when I have just under 100 HP left over, and this lets us use Tidal Flame. The annoying thing is, this time it deals 462 damage, enough to one-shot him, even at full health. But on the bright side, I'm glad it happened this way, because now it means I have more HP left over than I would have done if the first attempt had killed him. Next up, we have Garnet struggling to think of a new name before Ko-Fi drops his dagger. She picks it up and asks what it's called, then she gets a little lesson on weaponry, and in a eureka moment, decides on her name. She is of course going to be called Subscribe. Luke, we're 1 letter short, okay? And I need to convince some of you to subscribe after all. Did you know that 69% of all my viewers are from non-subscribers? And FYI, that's not a meme joke, that's the actual number. So now, we absolutely need more because nobody is ever going to believe that that's true. Now, before we enter into Dali, it's time to learn some abilities and get some levels for Steiner and Vivi, ready for the next 2 bosses. And of course, would you believe my very first battle out here is a back attack, where I obviously take damage. And so, it's time to reset, all because of 3 pesky snakes. In the second attempt, Vivi got hit. This is going to be a very slow, painful grind, it seems. But hey, Third attempt, we manage a win without taking damage. And so we go ahead and save and try for another before getting hit in the very next fight again. So time to reload once again. Eventually though, after 3 hours in game time, which with all the resetting was close to a full work shift of actual time, we finally got up to around level 12 for our party, and all abilities are learned. And so, it's time to stutter step my way to Dali, where we are forced to stay the night at the inn, and thankfully, there is a story heal now, which is going to be very helpful for the next 2 bosses. But while we're here as well, we're going to visit the shop and spend some of our gil right now. We want some new equipment and also to buy a massive 99 wrists. This is of course for the cotton robe trick later to give us a huge surplus of gil, which is going to be very, very important given how we're basically avoiding random battles the entire run as much as possible. Eventually, Discord gets kidnapped and we find him stuffed inside of a coffin. So of course we break him out, but then we get the shock of our lives. We see just how babies are made. Well, baby black mages. Anyway, before we fight Papa Black Mage, the Black Waltz 2. And this guy sucks. He's freaking fast, so no matter what, we are taking damage here. He will not, however, attack Subscribe, because he's here to kidnap her. The annoying thing is, she's not even in the next boss anyway, and any damage we take here is health we're missing for the next fight. And after Linktree tries to stab me in a barrel, it's time for the boss, and I derp hard here. I completely forget that he counters magic with magic, so I essentially willingly allow him to do about 200 damage to me for free. Normally, that would be an instant reset, but I know Lindblum heals me anyway after the next boss, so it all comes down to if we can beat him or not. So after a little back and forth with Ko-Fi hitting away, Discord using fire, Linktree using fire sword, and Subscribe whacking with a stick, we do eventually take him down. I didn't bother going for the steals either because honestly they weren't worth risking the extra damage. A huge downside though is I lost about 190 HP on Discord and around 300 HP on Ko-Fi and Linktree. So now I'm essentially starting the next boss at half health, who is much more brutal. But I am absolutely not going to forget the secret mechanic for the next boss. Before that though, I choose to return to the village so I can save. But there's a huge freaking problem. When we're entering the inn to speak to the Moogle, it automatically starts a cutscene which results in resting at the inn. This is entirely avoidable, and so we need to restart. This also means, however, we're redoing Black Waltz 2. This time, things went much smoother though. I do decide to steal this time around and get both items, which is nice, although ultimately not hugely important. I do use a fire sword, even though I get countered with fire. It does huge damage, which I think is an okay trade-off right now, and I do get hit by a couple of spells and a melee hit. But the fight at least ends in a win, and I have the steals this time, along with more HP than the first time. And of course, now I know there's no point in going back to the village, so we just climb aboard the airship while Ko-Fi gets to enjoy a very nice, soft moment. Anywho, on the airship, Black Waltz 3 starts with a sad cutscene for Discord, which instantly puts him into a trance, which is great because he's going to be the only character really doing anything here. You see, if we hit the boss with a melee attack, he will eventually fly up to avoid any more hits. But once he's up in the air, his extremely powerful Fundara magic becomes AoE, and we absolutely do not want that. For safety as well, I equip the rubber helm on Linktree and silk shirts on the boys. This is to at least reduce the damage from thunder attacks by 50%. Turns out my preparations were totally unneeded though, as the fight starts at full health. Never actually knew there was a story heal here, but because of that, this fight becomes so much more simple. I get Ko-Fi to steal each turn, Discord to double cast magic, and Linktree to use magic sword. With this strategy, not only do we get the steals, but we take him down in just a couple of turns. I do lose a little health, but I know there's a heal in Lindblum, so I don't really care about it. This upcoming heal in Lindblum, though, is going to be the last for quite a long time, which absolutely sucks for me, but we should be able to make it work. At least, I hope. But after the fight anyway, Subscrib decides to commit a massive crime and destroy an important junction for Lindblum, which is going to make any and all airship travel in and out of Lindblum impossible until it's repaired. Well, I mean, okay, it was technically the Waltz who did the damage, I just like blaming her because it's fun. Here in Lindblum, though, there is tons to do. Things like Linktree punching the literal ruler of the nation because he thought he was some random bug, and we get to find a new character in a bar. Now, I called Freya Moopet because of her being a dragoon and throwing very tame shade at Moop. If you don't know who that is, come watch the streams. But it wasn't until after the fact I realized I messed up because Freya is going to be one of the absolute most important characters this entire run. So now he gets to lord that over me. We can go to the sim store and make a ton of new gear. We can do the cotton robe trick, buy some normal equipment, etc. Oh, and let's not forget the whole breaking into a castle, beating up a guard to steal his uniform, and getting to the princess, who is all alone and unguarded. Somebody is getting fired. For sure. For the Festival of the Hunt, I really don't care who wins since I can't really use the Coral Ring anyway, as it absorbs thunder and we know absorption is bad when I can't heal. So we're just going to get into a fight with the first available mob and let it kill me. Sounds weird, I know, considering our healing rule, but there's a story heal right after the festival anyway, so it's fine. Thankfully as well, Ko-Fi gets extremely close to a trance, which hopefully we can save for a boss. Afterwards, we find out a war is coming. Subscrib drugs us, and honestly, I kind of always knew I'd get drugged by a subscriber eventually. At least this one though was only a sleeping drug. When we wake up, she's gone. Lovely, now it's time to chase after her, and the first step to that is getting a new character, Quinna from the Marsh. And since Quinna has such a one-track mind, the only name fitting for them is clearly Twitter. Now, at this point, we have two things to do. Chocobo Hot and Cold, along with Frog Catching. We want both of these to really speed up the early game and make some later sections a hell of a lot smoother. Not only that, it allows us to take a lot of risks. So, while going for all of the chocographs at the forest, we'll also keep frog catching as well, making sure to always leave a male, female, and golden frog left to ensure they respawn at the fastest possible speed. Sadly, this is going to take quite a while because of the items we need. In fact, this part is going to suck so badly it's unreal. We need to get 4 items, each of which has a 1 in 1024 chance of being obtained from randomly digging in Chocobo Hot and Cold. Namely, they are the Anklet, the Kakusha, the Extension, and the Barrette. Now, why do we want them? Well, the Anklet gives insane level up stats, namely 3 magic and 1 spirit, and it has the counter ability and locomotion ability on it, which will be great. The others also boost an element when equipped, which will help later, but it's also a super early way to get the ability up skill, which will double any AP earned. And considering how hard it is for us to grind, yeah, this instantly cuts the grind in half for female characters. And we can use the extension to teach Subscrib level up later on Disc 2. The Barrette, however, has no real useful abilities outside of its Ice Elemental attack increase and its +3 strength increase, which will be amazing for Freya. Then, we want to get 4 Robe of Lords. It gives us +1 for every stat on level up and blocks wind damage entirely. It's also the best armor for mages with an insane 46 defense. And in a run where we can't heal, yeah, we need to massively up the defense of our weakest party members. Last but not least is the Protect Ring. This halves all elemental damage received and can teach the half MP, long reach and magical element null skills, all extremely valuable. As for frog catching, we want to get 98 frogs. This will give us the Silk Robe at 9 frogs, a Bistro Fork at 33 frogs, and the Battle Boots at 45 frogs. But more than that, it will massively power up Frog Drop, which we're going to learn with Quina as well. To learn this, we have to fight Gigantoads in the marsh. They have 242 HP, and we need to deal 75% of its health in damage before we can eat it, which means we need to deal about 180 damage. Sadly, during this process, I did lose about 50 HP with Ko-Fi and about 60 with Mupet. Discord only lost 20 and Twitter only 10. At our current levels, this should do a few thousand damage, since the formula is basically just Quina's level times the number of frogs. So with 98 frogs and being level 12, this would be around 1100 damage, and will get stronger the more Quina levels up. This is going to be absolutely vital for the next boss, as my damage output is low enough now that we're going to get hammered in all the mandatory fights and bosses. And last but not least, we're going to use this chance to go ahead and learn all our new skills from all this gear and the gear we got from the Chocographs. Plus, thanks to 2 birds, 1 stone, we can get 100 dragon kills here as well. I'm sure most of you know what that is going to be for later, hopefully. If you don't, well, just wait and see. And once all is said and done, here is the results. And yes, we aren't even done on disc 1 yet, but have already spent well over 100 hours in this run. At least, on the bright side, this is a boatload of prep now, which means we can hopefully push through a huge chunk of the game now before we really need to do much else. I suspect we'll be okay now until after Clara, since that's where we lose Quina, who will be our carry. But all of that is under the assumption my current health is enough. Honestly, I feel like I should have been much more careful during the grinding phase. Anywho, enough plotting, let's go see how it holds up to Gizamaluke, shall we? Or we shall, after all the mandatory Black Mage fights in the Grotto. And these suck. They managed to do quite a lot of my remaining HP. The first fight, Ko-Fi lost nearly 90. And in the second, Mupet even gets put into yellow health. I actually don't know if we can beat Gizamaluke with our current HP, and even if we do, surviving Beatrix is going to be next to impossible, I feel. So, Gizamaluke. I tried to go for the tent trick to inflict silence, darkness, and poison. Hey, the rules said I couldn't heal myself. They didn't say anything about the enemies. But right away, he sadly killed Mupet with a water spell and then hit Ko-Fi. So in the end, I decide to reset. We absolutely cannot let a character die. Second attempt is much smoother. Firstly, I landed the tent trick first go, although he does manage to get a water cast off just before, but thankfully it was on Twitter, who was quite well protected. So I get Mupet to jump, Ko-Fi manages to steal the ice staff, Discord tries to focus, but well, we know that's never gonna happen, don't we? And lastly, I get Twitter to use Frog Drop twice. Sadly though, right before he died, he actually managed to land a melee hit on Mupet, dropping them mega low, even though he had darkness. Seriously, my luck is terrible now. Anyway, it's back to the runways for a quick scene, and then we're back with the main party. And thankfully, there was a story heal. This was 100% absolutely needed, or I honestly don't think we would have got past Beatrix. Before we go to her though, it's time to go and get our River Chocobo from an LSD-filled smoke vision. Then we have more black mages for a mandatory fight. Luckily though, only Twitter takes a hit, and even then it's a weak one, so we get to skirt past without any real danger. The same can't be said for the next fight, although I am pretty sure we get healed by time we need control of these characters anyway. So there are two ways to survive this fight, since it's unwinnable. The first method is sloppy and a terrible idea for a no healing run. That's surviving 10 turns. The other method is to do enough damage to trigger her use of Stock Break, which ends the fight. We're going to go with the second method. So I steal with Ko-Fi and then use Blizzer, Frog Drop, and a normal attack with the others. And just repeat this. I get godly RNG and get both good steals from her, which is just freaking nuts. And while Twitter does get hit, he's the only one, and he has the Robe of Lords equipped anyway, which thankfully lowers the damage down quite a lot. Following this, we get Stock Broked, and the fight ends, which means we have now completed Disc 1 of this challenge. Great, we're over 100 hours into this run and we're 25% of the way through the game. Once we start Disc 2, it's over to Subscribe and Linktree. So we equip them up, especially giving Linktree the Mithril Sword and Subscribe the Protect Ring. This way she can learn half MP, which means we can now technically use her summons. Well, some of them anyway, which will be handy, as there's a boss right around the corner. A rematch with Black Waltz 3. And in a normal run, this fight is so easy that it's impossible to lose, as he will never hurt Subscribe. And if she's the only character left alive, he actually kills himself. But in this sort of run, he's incredibly dangerous because he knows Freeze. Freeze is a move that, as the name implies, freezes my characters, but if they are then hit by a melee attack, it's instant death. And we really can't afford to lose characters right now, considering we're on my weaker party, and we have a really mean boss later. Now, to start with, I queue up an attack with Linktree and steal with Marcus. Then I'm prepared to summon with Subscribe, but I see that Linktree is doing huge damage thanks to Maneater and MP attack. So I decide to save my MP, since I only get one cast before the next story heal, and I have no idea if there's going to be one before the next boss. So best to play it safe, especially since after just 2 attacks with Linktree, he goes down. Now, we get to spend a huge chunk of our gil in Trino. First, we go to the normal weapon shop and buy a bunch of new stuff. And then we go to an auction for a bunch more of new pieces of equipment. Absolutely loaded with new abilities for me. The absolute most important being the Reflect Ring. This is gonna be huge for us, as it would allow us to completely ignore any and all magic for the rest of the run. So of course we absolutely have to learn some abilities with them right now, especially with easy access to Dali, where the mobs are extremely weak, so a few hits won't be the end of the world. So now it's time for a giant snake, and this goes weirdly. So first I auto attack with Marcus like a dope because I had auto battle on from the ability grinding. Then I get a nice little Shiva summon off, which thanks to my little ice boosting accessory from Chocobo Hot and Cold, dealt an awesome 2000 damage. Linktree proceeded to miss his attack. Marcus gets a steal in, and then somehow our little princess here manages to get the kill with a melee attack. Shame they don't have a brain cell between them though, as all 3 get caught in probably the most obvious trap in history. But enough about them for now. Let's go back to Ko-Fi, shall we? Especially because we have lots and lots to do now. Like going back to near Lindblum to get 2 more Chocographs now that we have the River Chocobo. And then we can go clear Clara out. We have a boss next with Antlion, and this guy is actually going to be one of the most annoying this whole run, I feel. Why? He has a counter which still lands even with darkness. Typical. But the really bad thing here is he has a move called Sandstorm. This is AoE, inflicts darkness on everybody, but the real kicker is it drops everybody all the way down to single digit health. I do think there is a story heal before Beatrix though, so we're gonna continue on for now while hoping. If not, well, it just means we need to reset to before Antlion and try to get a kill without Sandstorm going off. Will it happen? Maybe. I think if I didn't have an auto battle fail with Discord attacking at the very start, I might have killed it before Sandstorm went off. After this though, we see Linktree trapped in a bird cage, Subscribe getting knocked out and having her precious stolen. Stop being dirty-minded, guys. We're on about the beings inside of her, but it's actually a good thing. Why? Well, after this cutscene, we get a story heal, which means we're still in it to win it. And all it cost me was a few Eidolons. Absolutely worth it. Maybe. Now, we have a ton of forced battles again, and I even save everybody in Clara. I lose a little health, but since we have a boss coming up with Beatrix in a second, the amount lost doesn't really matter all that much really, especially because Twitter dies instantly to shock from her, which is shocking. Get it? Okay, I'm sorry. Although I am actually amazed it still did so much damage even with a Robe of Lords equipped. At least I think Twitter still had a robe. I don't think I changed it for another ability anyway, but it is kinda acceptable given I managed to steal the Ice Brand, a weapon for Linktree. As for the other characters, well, Ko-Fi lost nearly half of his health, Mupet lost nothing thanks to jump, and Discord lost a few hundred. As for strategy for the fight, I did the same as the first fight. I tried to do enough damage to force the end, but losing Twitter instantly really slowed this down sadly. But Bio from Discord managed to carry the rest of the fight for me. And just like the first Beatrix fight, we do get a mandatory story heal right after. So now we can rush straight on through to Zorn and Thorn at Alexandria, the pesky little clowns. Although on the way I do get caught in a few fights and did lose a little health, it shouldn't be enough to worry about though. As for Zorn and Thorn, well, they didn't really get to do much. Bio and Biosword was just far too much for them to handle, and they died after just a few quick turns without getting to really do anything. But even though we got here long before the timer was up, it was too late to save the princess. And to make matters even worse, we have another Beatrix fight. Thankfully, the last one. And we start out terribly. Linktree gets hit instantly by shock, which drops him to just 100 HP. Then I once again have godly RNG and get all of Beatrix's steals, making this by far my luckiest run in FF9, which means I'm probably going to suffer horrendous RNG eventually in this challenge. And eventually, Ko-Fi gets dropped down to double-digit health as well, while I try to push through dealing enough damage to end the fight sooner using Biosword and then Minor Strike. Bio, jump, and normal attacks before we eventually get through. Now I'm super screwed though, as the party is going to split up and we have multiple mandatory fights with fractured party members against Bandersnatchies. Aside from the statuses they can inflict, they have decent health and deal higher damage than I'd like. Oh, and we're going to have a boss right after them, so I have to watch my MP usage as well. Fun. Just like the previous two times, we get a story heal after Beatrix, which is much needed. Now for the Bandersnatchies and Mages though. First fight with Freya and Beatrix, it gets taken out with no real issue. I also don't really care much about the HP of these two characters as they don't really matter. For the next few fights, I do end up losing some HP and MP, which is not ideal given the boss coming up has to be fought by Ko-Fi, Discord and Subscribe. After a few fights though, it's back to Beatrix and I just clim hazard to get through those. So, boss time. And once again, I'm absolutely not going to try and pronounce Snakey's name. What we are going to do though is cast Bio with Discord, Steal with Ko-Fi, and get Subscribe to set up Protect so we can at least lower the damage as much as possible. It's not going to do a lot, but it will at least help since it's going to take a good few bios to get through it. Now, we just get Ramu and watch Lindblum get destroyed and invaded before being eaten by a giant gaping horror story version of a sex toy. I could totally fill that mouth though, just saying. Anywho, story heal, and all the shops in Lindblum have been updated now so we can go on a little shopping spree. Now, while doing some shopping, let's talk about the future story heals, shall we? So straight off the bat, I can't be 100% sure if there are going to be heals at these locations. It's only what I'm guessing. So, I expect the Black Mage Village to have one since we're forced to stay at the inn. The marriage at Condi Pete might be one. I imagine there will be one at the first visit to Maiden Sari during the meal, and maybe one at the end of the Iver Tree before we fight the Mistodons. This is only conjecture though. There could be more or less. It does, however, mean we have to go through a couple of really horrible locations and bosses though, with no heals. Oh, and Twitter is back. Let's celebrate by instantly having another boss. This time, Lania's up, and she hates Subscribe with a passion. So all of her attacks are focused on her. However, with her being in the back row and having a Robe of Lords equipped, she holds out pretty easily, although magic does still hurt a lot. But while I'm able to do about 3,000 damage per turn now with Twitter and Discord, we do manage to end the fight pretty quick, with Subscribe only really losing about half of her HP. But now we have the biggest pain ever, the Outer Continent. The trip through Fossil Rue was super straightforward, no random fights, so we could essentially just plow straight on through it. Then it's Condi Pete and Black Mage Village, which themselves aren't too much of a problem. Except for the one fight I got into right before I stepped foot into the Black Mage Village. But on the bright side, it lets you see how even trash mobs are doing a quarter of my health in a single hit, showing just how dangerous things are becoming now. Moving on though, and we get our latest party addition who replaces Twitter. A little 6-year-old girl, because child endangerment is fun. And speaking of fun, you're still here right now, which means you're probably having fun as well. So do you think I've deserved a comment and a like? It would really help a ton. So, time for the giant hill gigas now, and I make absolutely no attempt to steal the Flary Flute. Aside from the fact I wasted 10 lifetimes of luck stealing from Beatrix, the gigas is extremely strong, so I need to play it safe and try to win ASAP. I use Ico to keep casting Float on the party. Sadly, I was a second too slow and did get hit by Earthquake. Not much we can do about that other than hope we don't get hit by it again. Subscribe's job is entirely to keep Protect on Ko-Fi and Discord. These two are my main damage dealers with normal attacks and bio, so we absolutely need to keep them alive, as if one of them dies, my damage gets straight up halved, allowing Gigas more time to kill me. With Float though, all we need to do is watch out for his melee, but there's not much we can do to avoid that sadly with my current loadout. He eventually casts Curiga though, so I know I'm getting really close to the kill, and just a few more hits is all we need. Okay, time for a short toilet break, and then we can head off to the Iver Tree. And this is where we're going to do another risky grind for AP. Why here when it's so risky? because this is basically the only place we can easily one-shot mobs because they're all classed as undead. We can just use Phoenix Downs on them to instantly reduce their HP down to 1, and then we just need an extra quick hit for the kill. Likewise, we can just use the life spell on them as well. It's still incredibly risky and full of resets, but at least I can abuse the quick save feature and just swap screens to save, allowing me to grind without needing a Moogle. And hey, it's by far the easiest way we can grind right now. Once we're done and get to Soul Cage, since I naturally care about my HP, I have no intention of fighting this guy legit. So I use the life spell on him to instantly kill it since it counts as an undead type, giving us a quick 5-second win on this boss. That's not going to be the case for the next boss though, a 1v1 with a Morant, and there's no real easy way to win this with no healing at all. And with no story heal after Soul Cage, this means I'm limited to just 1300 HP. So, for the best chances, I use my best gear and throw on the Distract, MP Attack, and Man-Eater abilities along with Counter. This way we can maximize our damage as much as we can. So I turn Auto Battle on and pray, since attack is basically all we can do. Now, thanks to all the damage multipliers we have on, we're doing an insane 2,300 damage a hit, which is crazy good for this fight, and actually removes any real fear I had. Even with the buffs, I was thinking I'd do about 1,000, so it's nice to be wrong. All the focus on his strength stats has been worth it, it appears, and with Distract, he barely lands a hit on me, and even when he does, he gets countered for another 2,000 damage. This turned out to be a much smoother fight than I really ever expected. I still chose not to go for the steals though. And now, it's time to complete Disc 2 by going back to the Ifer Tree. Before that though, it's time to recruit our last party member, and since it was 4 AM, my brain wasn't ready to work for a name, so I called him Bob. I did admit though, when he introduced himself as the Flaming Bob, I did chuckle out loud a little. Now, there's no more bosses thankfully, and the Mizodons we have to fight are undead enemies, so life spells with Ico, Phoenix Downs with the others, and a few normal attacks is all we need. Although I did sadly lose Kofi's Trance, which sucks, as I was really hoping to use that later on a boss like Orc. Well, can't win them all I guess. Then we get to see Bahamut vs Kuja. Always a nice little scene. Oh, and Subscrib's mother dies. So moving on to something that actually matters though, we're now on to Disc 3, which means Tantarian. This is the last time we can fight him, and the only reason I'm going to try this is because I'm almost positive there's a heal in Lindblum coming up. I'm going to keep a backup save though, just in case there isn't, since this is going to be risky as hell, and I'm expecting a character to die here easily. But I also really want those haste shoes from him. Before that though, we buy the Dark Matter in Trino, watch Kuja summon Bahamut at Alexandria, and fight a bunch of Mizodons with Linktree and Beatrix. And oh boy, did they lower my health so much. So much so that Linktree ended up on just around 100 HP. Which means if there's no auto heal with all the character changing taking place right now, then he's going to be completely useless for Tantarian. Although, thinking about it, I can't actually remember if he's even in the party for that fight. It's been a long time since I've done this fight on Disc 3, okay? Now, it's time for the truly kick-ass cutscene, Bahamut vs Alexander, but it's hit and miss on copyright, so maybe a few clips, maybe not, we'll see. Anyway, Tantarian. This fight can be both horrible and easy, but there is a cheese strategy which works. So firstly, steal, and yes, I absolutely got it a first time. No, it didn't take me hundreds of attempts that I'm absolutely just not showing. Luke, we know how RNG is with us. This took a while. Anywho, once we get the demon mail, it's time to open it up by hitting away until we deal about 150 damage. Once it's open though, absolutely do not physically attack it. Just keep focusing with Vivi until it's open. This way, when it is finally open, just spam Fire for big damage. And as a bonus, when it's open, it can only attack with the basic poison spell, and we can completely negate that with antibody. Before he opened, we only had to deal with Edge as well, his normal melee attack. It does do decent damage, but hey, at least we didn't get hit with Paper Storm. That would absolutely wreck me sideways. But TLDR, 5 minutes later from spamming Fire, and we get the kill for some nice running shoes, which means now we can finally learn Auto Haste and start increasing our speed stat upon level up. And as an even bigger bonus, we didn't really lose much HP, which is a huge bonus for us. But now, let's just enjoy Subscribe watching her kingdom get nuked. After that, she becomes a mute. We turn leader of Lindblum into a frog, and now we own a boat. So that means let's do more Chocobo Far East. We have tons of chocographs to get, and also upgrading our Chocobo to the mountain and then the ocean form. Once we have all the chocographs from the forest and lagoon and our Chocobo upgrades, it's time to go dig them up in the world for all those lovely treasures. Likewise, we'll also do the mountain cracks and the dive spots as well. Once all of that is done, we only have 2 things left to do. The first is going back to Trino to the auction house so we can get the thief gloves. These are an absolute requirement for Zidane in my opinion, as it helps with stealing. Then we're going to go back to Evil Forest, that location from the very start of the game, as we're going to learn all our new abilities here. We have so much new gear, which means tons of new abilities for every single character. And since mobs near Evil Forest are the weakest of the weak, it means we can really minimize the amount of damage we take during the grind session. It does, however, mean we'll get next to no gil or EXP, but that's fine. We can live with that. And in fact, less EXP is actually much better for us, at least right now anyway. And the biggest reason we want to do this is because shortly the party is going to be split into 2, which means I need each side to have the best chance they can do. Likewise, we'll need all the help we can get for Pandemonium later. So grabbing these abilities now will basically be vital. So at Kuja's castle, we get a choice that really stumps me. Who do we take to Oilvert? And who do we leave at Kuja's palace? I honestly really struggle to decide this, since while we have 2 bosses, Ark and the stone thingy, which I can't remember the name for, out of these 2, Ark is by far the harder one, but magic can't be used there, so that makes casters useless. But likewise, I don't really want to have only casters for Kuja's palace. But in the end, I decided on Ko-Fi, Mupet, Linktree, and Bob for Oilvert. They're all physical attackers since the idea is to murder Ark ASAP, and with the boss in Kuja's palace, I feel like Vivi and Aiko can pretty much solo that fight, so the hard part is just getting to the boss, but I have some plans for that. Before we do Ark though, we need to go get the 2 chocographs here and mountain cracks. Once we get these, we go for the boss. Now, of course, we protect ourselves against confusion, etc., but there's still a problem. Ark can drop our HP down to single digit with an AoE attack, so the goal here is to kill it before he gets chance to use it. Nothing else matters, not even if I get any deaths. It is pure offense all the way. So I start attacking and jumping, but then I remember something. I have a bunch of wing edges from Chocobo Hot and Cold earlier on. So of course, the plan changes to get Bob throwing them as they deal an awesome little 6,000 damage, which is drastically more than a normal attack from him would do. And after just 2 turns, the fight ends with a much easier win than I expected. Maybe I could have gone for the steals, but safety is important. Okay, so next up we have the great game of red light, green light, only without the high-powered rifles aimed at me. Anyway, although I probably shouldn't try this minigame at work with how many times I failed while trying to do both at once, we get it after more times than I care to admit. Anyway, now is Valapira, and we only have a party of mages, but we have a little cheese we can do. Firstly, Valapira only really attacks with magic spells, so a simple solution to make this pretty much an instant effortless victory is for Aiko to just summon Carbuncle, which puts Reflect on the party. Then we can just bounce water spells with Vivi off of us. But there is something incredibly dangerous in this fight. My own stupidity. I get Carbuncle summoned for Reflect, summon Leviathan and use Frog Drop, then get Vivi to use AoE Water on my party. The downside? Reflect wore off. Because I queued up the other attacks first, this means instead of bouncing Reflect back, I instead proceeded to attack my own party for decent damage. To make matters even worse, I also queued up Holy with Aiko targeting Subscribe. And of course, no Reflect means I killed my own character in a run where I literally can't heal. This makes her useless now until the next story heal. But at least on the bright side, Subscribe's in her can't concentrate mode, so she's pretty useless right now anyway. Those slight problems aside though, we do end up getting the win. Now for the terrible moments though. Mount Gulug, where we have a boss, but also a mandatory fight with the dragons that can reduce my HP to 1 in a single attack. Just what we need. But a couple of flares and wing edges are enough. Bob does get hit though and loses a huge chunk of HP, which is not great considering we have a boss coming up. We also get the first summoning of Medine when Mog transforms, and I still love this little force summoning. I don't know why, I just think it looks awesome. But now for the actual fight with Multigemini, and while we do get hit with Virus, it works out a little in our favor for now, but I'll talk about that in a minute. For the boss itself, we pretty much just spam Holy and Wing Edges with the odd attack, jump and steal. We do get hit a few times for some pretty decent damage, but it should be okay as I'm sure there's a story heal after this. Then we find Hilda, who follows us back, and after Sid begs her to return him to being a human, she agrees as long as he never cheats on her again, or he'll face a much worse transformation. Look, guys, cheating is bad, okay? But for the love of God, never cheat on a woman who has no qualms about attacking the ruler of a nation. Seriously, with balls that big, she'd likely cut yours off as a tame punishment. Oh yeah, Subscribe can speak again. We get an item to summon Bahamut, and we also get an airship. This means it's time for more Chocobo Hot and Cold, since we can now get our gold Chocobo. And of course that means we can get access to Chocobo's Air Garden, where we can get the final Chocographs, and then proceed to dig them all up. Likewise, we can go to another new city, Daiguro. First step is solving the shop's puzzle to open that up, and then we can buy a bunch of new equipment. But now, I want a couple of levels before Terra. Not because I need the levels themselves or stats, but because I need magic stones. Terra is going to have a mob rush and then a 3-segment boss rush. So while we don't need a lot of magic stones, I do have a plan, which means I need about 35 stones on average per character. To do this, we're absolutely going to cheese the Yans. Sure, we could go ahead and do Grand Dragons with Auto Reflect, but given our need to stay at max HP, the Yan method just makes more sense to me personally, since anytime we get hit, then it's an instant reset anyway. And as a huge bonus, this will give us a little more health to help out with Flare Star later. But as you can see, it really doesn't go well. Every single hit they do is a one-shot, so I need to get lucky and summon Odin the instant the fight starts. Something that is much easier said than done. I do eventually get into a fight and summon Odin instantly. The downside, before it was actually summoned, the Jans managed to kill everybody off. Anyway, once that's finally out of the way, it's time for Tahaka next. And thanks to our little grind along with the new equipment, our damage has had a big change. Although we are heavily limited by MP sadly, but Shock deals a very nice 9,999 damage, while Holy and Flare deal some nice 4,000 to 6,000 damage each. So while the fight itself didn't take that long, that doesn't really mean the others won't. And let's be honest, I think we can all agree the hardest fight this run is likely to be Necron. The Memoria boss rush or the Terra boss rush. Those are going to be the big 3 fail points. And they're all coming up. But we have to fight Earth Guardian first with only 2 characters. And I can't absorb Earth, which sucks. So we're going to have to go with Auto Float and just pray we don't get hit by his death attacks. Ko-Fi is going to be mostly useless this fight, I feel, and it's likely to rely purely on Frog Drop. When we get into it, I have Auto Reflect to protect from the Gar spells and Float for Earthquake. So really, the big worry here is his melee. Ko-Fi has Distract on, which helps a little though, so I start off with Frog Drop and then I actually use Lucky 7 with Ko-Fi. You see, even though the vast majority of the time it does stupidly low damage, it has the potential to deal absolutely huge damage, which we're gonna hope for. It doesn't happen though, and while we're waiting on the 3rd Frog Drop landing, he puts Quina into trance, which is actually a huge bonus for us. Why? Leech has about 20,000 HP, and he can be eaten. We've done about half his health and damage already, and he even gets a Reflected Blizziger back on him, which means we can cook him. Not only does it instantly give me the win, we also get the Earthshaker ability, something I'm probably never really gonna use. But with him now out of the way, it's time for Terra, aka the place I'm expecting huge issues. Hopefully, I'm wrong though, because after Subscript passes out, there's no mandatory heals, I don't think. Which means tons of fights, including 3 bosses with no heals. Also, I'm just going to preemptively say I forgot to properly equip characters. So, yeah, fun times ensue. Anywho, for the first set of mob rushes, we have the Demon Horse, and this doesn't really give us any troubles. Auto Reflect stops bio, and then it's just a case of a few attacks. There isn't really anything else needed here, as it's the weakest one. The second fight is mostly the same, only I mix in some shocks. I do take a little damage here though, but I'm hoping for a story heal after these fights, so hopefully it's not too bad. As for the third and final fight, well, I attack away until he drops me to 1 HP, which is mandatory, and then Subscript comes on in and heals me. We can't control that, by the way, it's mandatory, so for the sake of the run, it's allowed. But now, I have no Bahamut equipped or learned, so I'm kinda screwed. Ko-Fi only does about 2,000 damage, and so does Subscribe with Leviathan. I probably should have used Shiva though, as he's weak to ice, but I didn't think of that. And while he does only have 10,000 HP, he sadly managed to rip me to shreds with a charge attack, which killed both of my characters right after he set Ko-Fi to just 1 HP again. So, let's try again. And thanks to the continue button on the main menu, we can just get straight back into it. Now, firstly, I have no idea how I keep missing so freaking often. I don't have blind, and yet I miss a solid 50% of my attacks. It is crazy madness. This time I use Shiva as well instead of Leviathan, which deals about the same damage. But at least this time around, the 1 HP attack came a little bit later, and this let me go ahead and get 3 hits in with Ko-Fi and 2 Shiva summons for the win. Now I just need to hope there really is a heal after this. Otherwise, with Ko-Fi stock on just 1 HP, I'm screwed. And of course, with my luck, the answer is very obviously no. No heal for me, which is horrendously bad considering we have 3 bosses in a row now. And to make matters 100 times worse, other than going for pure damage, I don't really have much more I can do here. I can protect myself against Wind Element for Silver Dragon and then Auto Reflect for Kuja. Garland uses a mix of AoE magical and physical attacks though. Oh, and Kuja has Flare Star and Demi. Both attacks are going to be completely lethal to me in a no healing run. So, Silver Dragon, of course, instantly kills Ko-Fi, but I was too slow to turn off speed up, and so it got another turn in as well for some AoE damage. Then I started throwing with Bob, Dragon Crest with Mupet, and attacking with Linktree. Right after this though, he uses Shockwave, which murders Bob. Lovely, 1 out of 3 bosses down, but half my party is dead. Next up is Garland. Attacks with Linktree and Dragon Quest with Mupet, again of course, and as a bonus, Garland misses his first attack on Linktree. He does get a flare off on his next turn however, before he uses Stop on his 3rd turn. But that's all. Linktree is only at about half health right now, and Mupet is a little over half, but Kuja is the bad one. Flare Star will deal about 1700 damage a hit. Demi will be horrible as well, so I start out with the same strategy, but then Linktree gets hit with Demi taking him down to yellow health before a Sad Thunderer takes him out. Now it's down to Mupet before a Flare Star takes her down to just 890 HP. I have managed to get a good few hits in though, so I expect he's close to death, but he screws me. His next turn is yet another Flare Star, aka enough damage to kill me. But the stars align. I win the lottery and have an orgy with a bunch of models because it misses, allowing us to get off 1 more Dragon Crest for the win. I have no idea how we pulled this off, but we did. And with only 1 character left alive. Now I just need to go into hiding because Moop is never going to let me live this moment down. But now it's all or nothing time. Memory, the final dungeon. 4 horrific bosses in a row, followed by 3 more goddamn bosses in a row. Now I'm pretty sure there's a story heal for Necron, but that means we still have to do 6 bosses in a row with no healing. Every bit of MP used is MP I won't have anymore, which means we need everything here. We're going to have to rotate all characters in just to ensure I can even make it to Kuja. And the big problem, even if I grind right now, there's no heal I can use to make use of any extra MP or HP gained. This means the stats I have now are what we're going to be stuck with. Well, let's give it a try anyway. Worst case scenario, I have to reload my save from before Terra to do a grind. Hopefully it won't come to that though. Anywho, first boss who I actually forgot about, so we actually have 5 bosses followed by 3. Nova Dragon, and yes, my party is all mages right now. Like I said, we're spreading out. So we're going to be using Flare, Holy, Bahamut, and normal attacks with no care for MP since none of these characters are even going to be in my final party. We do take a beating though, easily losing roughly 50% HP on Ko-Fi. Like is down to just a measly 800, while Discord and Subscribe are moderately okay, losing between 400 to 600 HP. I'm just glad I was smart enough to protect myself for wind damage, so we can immune his Twister usage, as that would have been incredibly brutal. But hey, 1 boss down. So that's just the 4 fiends, Death Guys, and Kuja to go before I get a heal. This is going to be really troublesome. For now though, I keep my mages as they have enough MP, at least for the next fight. I also make sure to protect myself against the fire element as much as possible, since that's going to help a ton here. Now, where to start? Firstly, I have Subscribe summon Bahamut with the last of her MP, Discord spams Flare, and Ko-Fi attacks normally. Light gets hit with heat though, and so can't act, otherwise she will instantly die. Once that wears off though, I have her using Holy. Ko-Fi trances and I get Subscribe to use Berserk on him for extra damage on his attacks. So now he's doing a nice 9,000 damage a hit. But then Like ends up dying to a melee hit. Not exactly nice since she's a third of my damage. Now I'm down to just Flare and Attack. But I do switch Subscribe over to attacking, and since I've been boosting her strength stat the entire game, she does an okay amount of damage, dealing around 1,600 per hit. But then Malarius puts up Reflect and Discord ends up killing himself with a Flare. Lovely, down to just 2 characters now before Ko-Fi kills the boss. But Malarius has an on-death attack, which of course kills Ko-Fi. Thankfully though, Subscribe survives it, albeit barely with just 293 HP left. Now I'm screwed though, so I abuse the autosave on screen transitions to get back to the save point to swap out my dead characters. The downside is now I have 4 characters left who pretty much carry me through the rest of the final dungeons, 5 bosses, before I get a story heal. And yeah, I don't think that's gonna happen. But next up anyway is Tiamat. For this, I have Linktree attack normally with MP attack, hoping to save some MP versus using Shock. Mupet, of course, carrying on with Dragon Crest, Twitter using Frog Drop, and Bob throwing Wing Edges. Thankfully though, Tiamat didn't use Snort and missed his only actual attack in the entire fight. For the rest of his turns, he wasted them trying to use Absorb Magic and Absorb Strength, meaning we could plow through him pretty quickly. I still need to be very careful here though with MP, since the later fight will be much harder. So, boss number 3 is Kraken, and I make sure everybody has Auto Reflect because of Vortiger. Sure, it means it will heal him, but healing the boss is better than me taking damage. Of course, the strategy is mostly the same as Tiamat, but I do get Twitter to swap over and use Twister instead of Frog Drop as it's slightly stronger. And I get Bob to use No Mercy. It's a little weaker, but I'd rather save the Wing Edges for later fights. Linktree gets hit by Ink, which gives him blindness, and really I should have protected him from that, but I guess in a sense it kinda came in handy as it means he kept some MP because of his misses. Mupet and Twitter managed to dodge everything like absolute champs, but Bob got hit twice by Watergun, dealing 900 damage or so total over both hits. All in all though, when Kraken dies, I think we're still in a semi-decent spot. Mupet has 6 Dragon Crests left, Twitter has about 10 to 11 casts of Twister left, I have some Wing Edges, and Linktree can get about 10 more attacks powered up by MP. So, let's set up now for Leech. Firstly, I equip Auto Float on everybody to avoid Earthquake and Earthshake, Locomotion protects me from Stop, and Venom Powder is protected with Antibody. That means we just have to deal with Death Cutter, which can miss, level 5 Death, which sadly can kill Bob as he is level 30, so I'm going to swap him out with Subscribe since she's nearly dead anyway, and then we just need to hope and pray Death and Doom never land. We'll also take advantage of Leech's weakness with him being a demon mob and him being weak to Wind and Holy. Sadly though, Attempt 1, Twitter got deafed instantly, and so that's an automatic restart. Attempt 2 is much better as he likes to use his Earth attacks a lot this time around, and thanks to Auto Float, I get to avoid them. Sadly though, I did forget to re-equip Antibody on Mupet, so they did get stuck with Venom, which ended up completely draining all her MP and half of her HP. Not ideal since we have 2 more bosses to go before a heal. So I get Subscribe to try and Berserk Linktree, which doesn't work annoyingly, so after I just swap her over to attacking, same with Linktree himself with MP attack and Demon Killer, his damage is insane with little MP cost. Twitter, I try a Twister, which should be good as it's Wind Element, but no, the damage is really poor, so I instead swap over to Frog Drop. He did get targeted by Doom, but that thankfully missed. And then shortly after that, the win came in gloriously. Now, we're on to Death, guys, and I'm hella worried about this fight, and those worries came true as he opens up with Meteor. Thankfully, the damage to Linktree and Bob was quite low. Twitter, however, took a huge hit from it, but thankfully didn't die. So I have Bob throwing wing edges, and he has the power throw ability equipped to make them stronger. It does cost 19 ability stones, but is worth the trade-off. I have Mupet constantly jumping with the high jump ability equipped for extra damage, and to help avoid damage. Linktree attacking and Twitter using Frog Drop. Twitter gets hit by a melee and gets left with a tiny 28 HP left, and then targeted again for another one, but thankfully dodges it to stay alive by the skin of their teeth before we ultimately get the win. I'm super screwed now though. Pretty much every attack Kuja can do to me can one-shot characters or my whole party, and I have basically no MP left to even use any decent skills. A single Flare Star will kill Bob and Twitter, potentially even Mupet. Same deal with Flare as well. I do think we can potentially win this fight with my current health and stats, but it's going to require some luck. By which I mean a winning lottery ticket amount of luck. Ability wise, since my HP is already lowered so much on each character, I take off the HP abilities to use the stones elsewhere, since it only lowers my max HP. I make sure to have Maneater on and throw on Return Magic on Bob, so that if he does get hit by something, hopefully he'll survive and cast it back at Kuja. Hard to say though with his HP being so low. But of course, we got hella unlucky. Twitter died pretty much instantly to Flare, then Bob died to Flare Star, Linktree got double flared to death, and then another Flare Star to kill off Mupet. We probably did about 60 to 70% of Kuja's health though, so I feel like maybe we can get it. I think I'll throw on Auto Reflect as well to at least counter Flare. At least that's what I wanted to do, but I hit continue on the menu and it put me straight back into the fight instead of the area. And this attempt was by far so cursed, it's unreal. Firstly, he sets up Reflect and then Holy's Bob. Bob survives and uses Return Magic, which casts Holy back, but that gets reflected onto Linktree. A Flare Star kills off Twitter and Bob, and then I kid you not, he gets 3 freaking turns in a row to kill off Linktree with Flare, and then murders Mupet right after. The annoying thing is as well, I did about 40,000 damage this time, which means we were only 1 or 2 hits away from the win. Attempt 3, Kuja bypasses Auto Reflect and kills Bob, then murders Twitter with Flare Star, followed by hitting Linktree with a Holy and Flare Star before ultimately killing him with a 3rd hit for yet another loss. And what's really annoying here is there's a story heal right after this fight for Necron. So if we can just get through it, then we can beat the game. I really want to get through the game without healing, and I know I can just load my pre-Terra save to grind and then get the story heal that way. But honestly, at this point, that just feels cheap. But no matter what I do, I just can't make any headway. As soon as I do about 30,000 damage to Kuja, he hits me with multiple Flare Stars in a row that just keeps killing me off. At this point, I don't even know if the fight is possible with my limitations. I basically need a perfect run where he only uses Holy on Freya and Steiner, and then for Bob to avoid every single Flare Star. But it's not even getting close to happening. He casts Flare Star way too often and seems to also cast it as a counter attack as well. Now at this point, I have 2 choices. Go back to pre-Terra and grind more, or call it quits here. Well, I hate giving up, so we're going to go back and have a grind to gain a few more levels. It will mean my levels are higher, so Flare Star does more damage to me, but I'll do more damage to him, and I'll have more HP and MP along with the chance to have some different characters alive. And since this video is so long, let's skip back to Kuja with a TLDR. Zidane and Aiko are dead because I'm an idiot and they got killed by level 5 Death to Leech, while Vivi got unlucky to being horribly abused by Malarius, Tiamat, and Kraken. Like, seriously, they really didn't like him. My Quina is also yellow health again because, god damn it, but at least we have 4 characters with decent HP and MP, and I even managed to keep 2 extra wing edges for Bob. Now, with Dagger in the party, we use Wing Edges, Bahamut, Dragon Crest, thanks to keeping a little more MP with Freya, and normal attacks with Steiner. Things seem really positive, at least until he hits me with 2 Flare Stars back to back, which kills me. The counter is the most lethal part by far. It would be fine if I was at full health, but sadly, that's just not really going to happen. Eventually, we get one hell of a run. Firstly, I set up Bahamut, Attack, Dragon Crest, and a Wing Edge. He opens up with Reflect for a nice wasted first turn, which means I do well over 30,000 damage, and even close to 40,000. That means he's close to dead already. Sadly, he flares Mupet, taking her down to 900 health, and then murders her with a Flare Star. Subscribe is next to die to a flare, and then once again we get another Flare Star, which kills Bob, leaving only Linktree alive. Thankfully though, instead of murdering Linktree with literally any ability, he casts Reflect, allowing me to get 1 tranced hit in for the win. And now we can move on to Necron, where we should get a full heal. At this point as well, we're going all out damage to kill Necron ASAP. He has just way too many statuses and cheap gimmicks to fight against, so we want to end this as quickly as possible. So, Dragon Crest, Bahamut, Wing Edge, and this time we get Linktree to use Shock. That's right, we're seriously all out now. And I've got near enough across the board protection for status effects, because we all know what Necron is like. His first hit is Holy, which lands on Bob and thankfully doesn't do too much, only about 500. But then we get hit by Blue Shockwave, lowering Subscriber down to 1 HP. That means next hit, she's dead. Thankfully, we get a little breather as he uses Protect next. Of course, just in time to lower the damage from my shock. But then he hits me with an AoE Fire Rigger. Weak damage across the board, but it does kill Subscribe. Following that, he uses Grand Cross. Probably the worst attack he has. It deals huge damage to Linktree and nothing on Mupet and Bob. Likewise, no status effects due to the protection. And then he wastes his turn with Shell, giving me another nice little break, as after another shock, we get the kill. Meaning, we beat Final Fantasy IX without healing. Well, kinda. We didn't manually heal. The only heals we got were the mandatory story ones, which are completely unavoidable, which makes this an even better run than my 10 no healing run. Question is though, what game should I do no healing on next? Let me know down below in the comments. And hey, with how long this video is, I would really appreciate some help with the algorithm, guys, as YouTube's hit or miss with such long videos. So please be sure to drop a like and share the video as well. Whether it's to Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, or some Discord servers you're in, I would greatly appreciate it. And of course, be sure to check out the socials linked below, or you can scan this QR code to get a list of every platform I'm on. Until next time though, everybody, thanks for watching, and I'll see you soon.